Hey, somebody's got to file the flight plan. You have? Excellent. Good morning, afternoon, or evening. You are listening to the Professional Noticer. Hello, everyone. I'm Andy Andrews. Hey, thank you for making me a part of your week. My purpose here today, and with every show we do, is to play the part of a best friend or a coach. I want to help you live the life of your wildest dreams by giving you access to the greatest mentors the world has to offer today. This week, the Professional Noticer is sponsored by Books for Vets. The Veterans Administration has asked us to provide them with 10,000 books. That's where they're starting. So we're asking you to help us help them. We've got a place on the andyandrews.com website that you can add a book to your order or just order books. But what we're doing is that for every $10, that will cover the cost of a hardback book, the handling and the shipping to the VA. And so just for $10, you can help. And so there's a place on the website that you can be a part of that. It's Books for Veterans. This goes to the employees of the Veterans Administration and some of the veterans of our United States. We appreciate you being helpful with that. So, observations and answers, what we do here. And today is a prime example. This is an example of a show that I wanted to do when I conceived doing the show. Because my personal mission in life is to help other people live the lives that they would live if they only knew how. And so I'm always trying to figure out how do we best do that? How can I explain certain things? How can we make things applicable to younger people? How can we expand the horizons of what people believe and understand that they can do? And so unbelievably, I feel like God put this person in my lap in a way, because what are the odds of a guy from Canada ending up with a house right next door to mine, and we becoming like best buddies? It's just kind of odd. But our guest today, we have not had anybody like him. And I'm going to go ahead and welcome him. And just as we go along, I'll just tell you a little about Brian Bakken. Hey, buddy.
Hey, Andy.
I really appreciate you coming in.
Oh, I don't mind at all. I don't like the intro, though. We haven't had anybody like him, but you've got all these fans. Well, I understand. So all the other guys are famous people.
No, you're kind of a bigger deal.
No.
And I'll tell you why I think you're a bigger deal. How long have we lived next to each other? I mean, I know this is just one of your houses. This is my only house, but it's one of yours.
2009, I think.
Okay.
I think it was 2009.
So like 12 years, 11, 12 years. Yeah. Yeah. And so you have watched our boys grow up.
Mm-hmm.
Polly and I've watched Levi grow up, and so it has been amazing, but we've spent a ton of time just kind of out on the docks, just back and forth, out in the yard, just talking. And through the years, I have gotten a certain belief system of mine about you and about what you have done that has become a very important thing that I think that people need to know, and especially young people. Okay, now I'm just gonna, and I know this is probably gonna embarrass you, and so I'm just sorry right from the start, but Brian owns a bunch of companies. Okay, I mean big companies, and now I know if you look at Brian, you might think, it's just like, where does he work? Does he work like at a gas station or something? I'm sorry, but
that's fine. I could
look like you.
I could.
Yeah, but Brian is. Let me give you an idea of how Brian just kind of looks normally. When Brian bought the airport down here, these people flying, Jimmy Buffett's flying in, all these people flying in their jets. And, Brian just kind of roaming around. Well, these people would get off their jets and go get my luggage off the plane. And Brian would go, yes, ma'am. And he'd go get the luggage off their plane, bring it in. They'd hand him like a $10 bill or something like that. And he would turn around and just give it to one of the ladies at the desk. And, here's lunch. But never say anything. But that's Brian.
I got $100 one time.
Did you really?
Because they needed a ride and didn't want to rent a car. They needed a ride to their condo. And I said, no problem. So I grabbed one of the crew cars and loaded them all up there and drove them to the condo, and I got $100.
There you go.
I first said, don't worry about it. That's no problem. Oh, no, we insist. So I was able to take that $100 bill back to the line guys and say, hey, look what you do if you can step out of the box and be nice.
Yeah. So Brian is like a hero of mine. I mean, I'm telling you, not just personally, spiritually, but business-wise. And here's what I want to get to. I don't want to I'll tell you a couple stories as we go along. I'll prompt Brian to tell you a couple stories as we go along. But I'm trying to figure out how to say this without embarrassing you. But here sits a person that when we see things that need to be done for people or organizations or whatever, he can do it, and he does it quietly, and nobody asks, nobody knows what's been done. But he has the ability to do that. Now, he has the ability to do that because of something. I'm always going to the bottom of the pool. I'm always trying to think to the bottom of the pool. And so, when you moved in, the first thing, somebody, I don't even know who it was, and it's probably BS, but somebody, said, well, he's worth like $100 million. And, but of course, the guys at the entrance there, they told somebody not too long ago that I own 13 McDonald's. So,
cool.
So
I'd like to have $100 million.
Yeah, I'd like to have 13 McDonald's, and then I'd sell them for $100 million.
There you go.
But the thing is, I became very curious about you, and with your stories through the years and talk, I met your dad, and I met her. So. The thing that's fascinating is that, ladies and gentlemen, if you are watching this and you are 15 or 16 or 17 years old, you can do exactly what this man has done to get where he is. I mean, I wouldn't tell everybody that you could do what I have done, because maybe you can't talk that fast. Maybe God didn't give you the gift to write. I can't tell you that, that everybody could be a doctor if they wanted to, because not everybody makes those grades. Not everybody's bent that way. And I'm not downplaying at all what you have done, because you are one of the smartest. Let's put it this way. You're one of the wisest people that I know. And so what I want you to tell first is this, because I think, now we haven't even talked about doing this. I just said I wanted you on, and you were like, what?
And my wife said the same thing. What in the world do you want to talk to you about?
Okay, well, here is a foundational story that I want you to tell, and you have no idea what I'm fixing to ask you to tell, but I want to build a picture for everybody that's listening and watching on how this all started. Tell me about the couple of days when you turned 16 and you were going to buy your first car, and your dad was taking you to buy your first car.
Well, my dad had an electrical contracting business. That was after we moved off the hog farm, where I, ended up out of the city at 10 years old, moved onto grandma's hog farm. So the next morning I got 1,000 head of feeder hogs and 50 sows to look after, plus cattle and stuff like that. It was a great time. But, as we lost enough money on the farm, it was interesting. I mean, hog prices went from 80 cents a pound to 20 cents a pound, but it costs you 40 cents a pound to raise them.
Oh my gosh.
So they actually have Canadian agricultural people making sure you're not going to kill all your hogs, because you'd have saved a lot of money had you dug a hole and killed 1,000 hogs and threw them in a hole. But they knew that would disrupt the food chain, so they stopped the farmers from doing that.
Wow.
So Dad, at the time, went, well, we gave this a good run, a good try, and he was an electrician. And he went, I guess it's a good thing about having a trade. You can try lots of different things, but you got a backup plan. So he strapped his tool belt back on and went to work in the city, run an electrical company, ended up having his own electrical company, which when I was in high school, that was my vehicle, is electrical service truck.
Okay.
Big box in the back and stuff like that.
Right.
And after school, I'd be going to work for Dad, and on the weekends and holidays and stuff like that, he'd lay out work that you need 2 men for. But I mean, going back, what you're asking is that 16, 17 years old, and I was kind of one, if I was taking a girl out on a date or something like that, maybe not to have her in my service truck. And I felt I should have a car.
Right.
And he says, okay, that's fine. I'll let you, I'll let you buy a car, but I'll show you how it's done. We'll go out and take a look.
And how much money did you have saved?
About $3,500.
Right. Okay.
So we went down.
I say right, like I'm.
Well,
I have heard the story.
That's not bad.
Go ahead.
I mean, not bad back then. At,
Right.
That age, and have $3,500 bucks.
Sure. So you got $3,500 saved.
Yeah. So we went down to the car lot and checked a couple car lots, and we found this. You do the Corinthian leather thing. I think that was in the Cordoba.
Yes,
right?
a Chrysler Cordoba.
Yeah.
Rich Corinthian leather.
That's right. As a boat.
Yeah.
I mean, you could double as a boat. And that's what it kind of came down to. And you could get that for, it was about $2,900 or something like that.
Yeah.
You know? And Dad would say, I said, well, I guess that'll work. But he said, well, you need to go home and you sleep on that first. You don't just go and make a decision like that in the same day. He says, you take your time. You don't have a car now. You never have had one. What's a couple of days going to matter, right?
Right.
Okay. So I went back home, and then I got in the next couple of days, I got in my company truck again and just went to go check on that Cordoba and checked around. And he asked me after a couple of days, he said, so are you making a deal, or what's the deal on the car? He said, don't have it. I said, I'll tell you what. I found something different and kind of more suited to what I think would look pretty cool, right? And he said, what's that? I says, it's a Mustang. He says, a Mustang? He says, that is going to get you nothing but tickets and trouble from the police. Lived in a small town, and he says, that's going to cost you a lot of problems. I said, well, I can behave and drive that properly just like anything else. He says, yeah, the temptations in those sports cars, I mean, you attract a bunch of attention. I said, yeah, I understand. He says, well, how much is it? I says, it's right at $4,000. And he looks at me and goes, well, how much money did you say you had? I said, I got in the bank $3,500. He says, well, how are you going to make that work? I says, a crazy thing. I went to the bank. It was a credit union. And I told him, I says, look, I got this $3,500, but I want to buy a car that's $4,000, but I'm going to have to license it and do all that stuff.
Right.
And they said, it's no problem. They'll lend me a couple $1,000, and then I can go get the car that I'd like.
And what'd your dad say?
Well, he was paused for a moment. He looked at me and says, Brian, who do you think you are? Who do you think you are? I says, excuse me? He says, you're going to go and drive around and show off in this car that isn't even yours? You don't even own it? Tell everybody, oh, look at me, look at my car and stuff. It isn't yours. What's wrong with you? And I sat back. I mean, that took me totally off guard. I mean, I guess I look back on it now, it probably shouldn't have. But it did. And, I ended up with a Cordoba. I mean, I was embarrassed, and Dad didn't try and shame me, but he pointed out, he says, you're going to drive around in something that you don't even own and tell people it's your car when it's not?
Right.
He said, that's a lie. And he says, you're pretending you're somebody that you're not. So
Okay, so you didn't have car payments the rest of high school. And so when you got out of high school, you probably had some more money saved. And now you told me this in a funny way one time, but you did not go to college.
Nobody even brought that up.
I mean, that kills me. That's what you said to me one day. You told me on the dock one day, you said, I must not have been college material.
Nobody even asked me. Nobody suggested, gee, Brian, maybe you should do this or that.
Not your parents?
You know?
Not your friends? No guidance counselor?
No. My guidance counselor says, Brian, you should probably consider working on getting through grade 12. And I thought, okay, well, that makes sense. I didn't know until afterwards I could have dropped out of school at grade 10. I didn't know that. I thought maybe the police would come and arrest you and drag you back to school or something like that.
Right.
When I found that out years later, I said, I'd have been gone in grade 10 if I would have known that.
Don't tell Adam.
No,
okay.
yeah,
don't tell Adam. So when you graduated from high school, you had some money saved, and what'd you do?
My parents left me shortly after. They moved from Alberta back to Saskatchewan. They didn't invite me. I mean, I was working.
They didn't say, "Hey, come along with us."
Dad sold his electrical business,
okay.
And I was working that business, and I went to work for the new owners as an electrician.
Right.
And we did that and stuff. And
when did you get your bulldozer?
Oh, that was
because that's when you started taking 12 and then leasing 12.
Well, I mean, I had an opportunity back in when I ended up getting back to Regina at the steel mill and stuff like that too.
Right.
Was buying I think the first major piece of equipment that we bought was a 80-foot Genie man lift, and I talked to Barry, which is now my partner. But I mean, I was an employee of his at the time, and it was an opportunity that if the mill had their own equipment, it tends to get tore up with everybody jumping on it, every different kind of guy. So they felt that if you had a trained operator and somebody that looked after that machine, it would be ready to work when you needed and taken good care of. And that was a really good situation for both the company and our company. Worked out well for buying equipment. I thought, well, that's pretty tricky thing to do. Or once you own that and stuff like that, then you can get some good income for it. It requires labor.
So you're watching this happen, and so then you went and bought a used bulldozer.
I did, yeah.
And so how did you play out the time on that bulldozer?
Well, it was either you go and rent one you had some work that needed to get done, and people were always renting equipment and bringing it. So I thought, well, that's a waste of money, right?
Sure.
So why don't I buy my own and put that to work? And
I bet you didn't make payments on it, did you?
No.
And so you would run the bulldozer part of the time and lease it out the other part of the time,
or have another employee run it.
Yeah.
But it brought in a whole bunch of work that we wouldn't normally have because we had the tools.
And right now you're still just getting started. How old are you at this time?
Well, I'm 59. I got one more year to go before I hit the 60. Huh?
Right. So how old were you then? When you got the bulldozer, how old were you?
That was the equipment I got going on down here. I guess I was 30 when I moved down to Alabama. It'll be more than that. 32, 33 is kind of when I then started expanding.
But when did you get the bulldozer? Tell me when you first bought that first thing.
If it's just a bulldozer, it was down here.
No, I'm talking about the first thing that you bought in Canada that you were debt-free on, and that you kind of started this debt-free thing, buying a little bit at a time.
That would be the man lift,
okay.
Andy, okay?
All right.
And, it's something that I pushed, but Barry, my partner now, had the cash to go and do that.
So with that idea, you got a piece of it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And so, but from there, you kept acquiring like generators and bulldozers and you wouldn't ever put them on payment plans. You just buy them and then lease them out. And so this gets bigger and bigger. Now, I don't want to drag this out forever, but this got bigger and bigger and bigger, and you just did it slowly as you would accumulate the money, you lived in a frugal way. I don't really know at what time you and Vicky got married, but I'm assuming it wasn't right out of high school.
Oh, heck no, I was 31.
Okay, so you're 31 before you got married.
Mm-hmm.
And so so you're doing this. Now, see, I come into the picture watching you at some point that I find things out about you kind of by accident, because we were down in the backyard one day, and you said, "Yeah, I gotta go to Canada tomorrow," and I'm not. I wish I didn't have to get on the plane, and I'm like, oh, "Really? Where are you going for?" And I'm aware you have businesses up there, and you came down here because of people because the steel mill, right? Because you put a ton of people to work. You bid on the job from up there. And let me back up here. I don't want to be convoluted, but there was a time that you saw people standing on the side of the day laborers, and you saw a guy in a suit going and hiring them, and you asked somebody, what are those guys, right? And then you became a master electrician so you could bid on jobs. Mm-hmm. Didn't have any desire to be an electrician. You just wanted to be able to bid on the jobs and put other people to work.
Yeah, I kind of like that. Yeah, Barry had to better the master's license. I was a journeyman, interprovincial journeyman, and stuff like that.
Okay, and so then when you started bidding on the thing here, the steel mill in Alabama, you put so many people to work that you and Vicky and Levi came down to just kind of watch it for 6 months.
Well, we didn't watch anything. We, Levi was 3 years old. Vicky looked after him, and I worked hours and hours, weekends, 16-hour days, doing a high-pressure greenfield site, building a brand new steel mill after the trees are cut down.
Okay.
So it was high pressure, and I didn't want to come to Alabama. When I was asked by the head guy of the steel mill in Canada that had seen me work or that I worked around, I mean, he's a top guy. I mean, he's an office, but if he came out in the field, he'd usually try and look me up and see what's going on because I was wherever the disaster was, which is why he was coming out to see what the disaster was.
Sure.
And he's the one that impressed upon me to come down to get involved with this project in Alabama. And I was going to Alabama, and I, as a kid, watched Bugs Bunny, and so all I could think about is the Hatfields and McCoys playing banjo on the front.
Right.
And I'm going, I don't know about this Alabama thing, but Chuck Sneeda, his name is one of my mentors and stuff like that. A wise guy, tough steel mill guy, but he wanted the flavor of how things operate at that steel mill to be in the new steel mill that they're going to build here.
Right.
Because we didn't have a lot of steel mills in this lower Alabama.
Right.
And I said no a couple of times. We were doing electrical work in the Caribbean. That was our fun stuff, right? It's nice to have some fun projects and starting that up, and had to kind of shut that down to concentrate on this steel mill. And it was only Barry and I that came down, and we had one other guy from Canada come down that we knew, and otherwise we hired everybody else, fired a superintendent and everybody else local, and had close to 300 men at one point in time. Okay. And high pressure stuff that needed to get done.
Yeah. And so I and then I guess you guys spent a winter here and thought, what the heck are we doing in Saskatchewan, right?
When I see the butterflies come down as they migrate, and I know that their brain would fit on the end of a pin, and say they're smart enough to get out of Canada in the wintertime. So I kind of went, this is. My guys asked me, say, "Hey, Mr. Brian, y'all going back to Canada for Christmas?" I go, "No, I'll go back in the summertime."
No,
yeah, it almost gets too
for
cold here.
A long time, you guys went to Mexico.
That's right.
Yeah. All right. So you're down here, and so we're out in the backyard one day, and you're going to Canada. And I say, "Why are you going to Canada?" And I say, "Well, they're doing some kind of celebration for the air conditioning business." And I said, "What air conditioning business?" And you said, "You got an air conditioning business." And I'm like, "Brian, I didn't know you had an air conditioning business." And you told me that story. Now, Tell everybody that story. I want to hear the story of how a disaster helped you get an air conditioning business because all you did was solve a problem.
Well, the air conditioning business I started in Canada was because of the steel mill stuff. But the one that I think you're talking to is when I started up an air conditioning business down here, which I wasn't really interested in doing because I had enough on our plate doing stuff but the management at this steel mill down here would impress upon me, Brian, you should put a team together to do air conditioning. And I would say, no, these other guys are okay. Until one night, and when the air conditioning on these overhead 275, 300-ton liquid metal cranes goes down in the girders, they're all running on electronic drives. And when the air conditioning goes down, the drives don't work, the cranes don't work, the melt shop, wherever you're at, shuts down, can't operate, and you've got to open up the doors and start blowing air in, which is dirty, nasty, and it just is a horrible mess. And it costs hundreds of thousands of dollars an hour to have a steel mill that doesn't run.
Right. So
the air conditioning tech was up there and found out, oh, gee, I need this part. And so he had to order the part because he didn't have one. And so we got the crane back up and running by blowing air, dusty, dirty air into the girders and got them back up and running. And I asked him the next day, I says, when is that part going to be here? And he says, supposed to be here on UPS at 10 o'clock. I says, good, because it needs to get installed. We need to get this thing going. I says, okay, and how many did you, it was a $50 part, a valve.
Right.
I says, how many of those did you get? You know what he said? One. The place is down, costing hundreds of thousands of dollars an hour, and he needed a part that he didn't have, and he bought one, and it's worth $50.
Yeah.
I just went, there's no help. There's no help for you if that's the way you think.
Yeah.
And I went home thinking, oh, this is just not going to go work. And the mill trusted me to
and they had to shut everything down.
Well, yeah. So I coached football with a guy that was was a friend of mine and a much smarter coach than me. I was more of a manager, but he worked at an air conditioning company locally. And I said, Brett, you want to take another opportunity? Try something different? And he was into residential commercial. He goes, yeah, maybe we will. He regretted it, really. he regretted it afterwards because he was sleeping in these crane girders trying to keep that equipment up because it just hadn't been looked after, right?
Right.
So we got everything back to shape and stuff like that too, and it turned out really, really well. And I think we do a good job for the area. Have employed some good people, and people learned a lot.
Then you started having other companies call you because their air conditioning people couldn't get to stuff.
On the industrial side of things, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so how many, now just try to give me a ballpark with Canada and here, because when you went to Canada, you had not even seen any of these vans. How many air conditioning vans?
Well, the company we had up there, which that got sold out. I mean, we were running 40 vans at one point in time around the city.
And you hadn't even really seen them. Mm-mm. Yeah. And all you did in both places, and see, this is something I've really pointed out to the boys through the years, knowing you, is that where everybody else sees this massive problem, Mr. Brian sees an opportunity. Mm-hmm. Because whoever fixes that problem, I mean, and I've told him, I said, you think back, we saw over at Orange Beach Marina, there for a long time, there was this 80-foot yacht there. And we all kind of would laugh because the guy who owned the yacht, his father had been the one who kind of invented dental floss or something, I mean, here's a guy who puts like wax on thread. But I guess, for a long time, toothpicks were the only way anybody got it. And you can get stuff in your teeth you can't get out with a toothpick, and it hurts. And so he solved a problem. And how'd you like to have a penny for everything of dental floss that goes out. And so Band-Aids, I mean, I don't know what they did for cuts and scrapes before, but somebody solved the problem. Kleenexes, somebody solved the problem. And that's what you have done over and over and over again. Now, before I cut to just how to, I just want to cut to an application on this, but I've got to tell everybody the story of the day I went next door, because I see Brian's truck there. And they're usually only there on weekends because they get, house over here, house over there. So they're usually only by us for, the weekend. So I see his truck. It's middle of the week, and I go over. And if you hadn't figured it out, Brian's, he kind of plays at being grumpy. You can kind of, if you don't know him, or if you're a little kid, you might think, oh, you might be kind of scared of him. But he's just play acts being grumpy. And see, I know it's like all a charade. But I go over there, and Brian's sitting. I see a picture where you're sitting. You got the laptop, you hammering away, and I said, "What are you doing here?" And he said, "Yeah, I just hate it when people waste money. It doesn't matter if it's their money. You're wasting anybody's money. Somebody shouldn't be wasting somebody else's money. If you're working for somebody, you should be watching and taking care." And I'm like, "What's going on, Brian?" And so Brian says, "Well, I'm there at the steel mill, and I've got one of those corner offices, and they're walking around in suits, and of course Brian's walking around in an outfit that has Brian written on the thing there. I mean, just to throw it in their faces. I mean that's what you do. I'm just telling you. They probably don't listen to this. They don't know, but Brian says, so I'm hearing them talk about they're going to lease this big 4-poster crane." Some kind of crane, and Brian says, and they're saying, oh, $600,000 a year is about what we could go, and and we'd do a 6-year thing, and so Brian says, so I told him, I said, I'll lease you a crane, and they looked at Brian and said, you do that? And Brian says, well, of course I do that. I don't just run all these guys and I do that. And he said, and I mean, correct me if I'm getting the numbers wrong. Brian says, but I can do a 6-year lease on that for $450,000, but I'm not going to go into some kind of bidding thing with you. We're not going to be negotiating or anything like that. I'm going to go over here in my office and take 15 minutes, talk it over. And if you want to do 6 years for $450,000, I'll do it. And so, right? And so,
yeah, it was kind of like that. I mean, there was some base numbers that they had, but the problem is that when I kind of talked to him on this gantry crane, we weren't 100% sure it was going to work. I mean, to do the job that it needed. Because
they had to do is to clean the steel pot.
Well, there's different things that needed to go and work for. Well, they had some base prices of what it took for hydraulic cranes to do this, right? And so that was mapped out. We knew it was cost X number of dollars. And I said, look, I'll get you a gantry crane. No risk to you guys. And we'll do it for 75% of what you've spent for hydraulic cranes. And we can do it quicker, more efficient, safer, and do a lot more than you could do with stationary hydraulics.
And you told him, but we're not negotiating anymore.
Well, no. I'm saying I'll take it upon me. I'll take the risk and stuff like that. And here it is, and it's worked out really well for both of them. But
wait, don't say it's worked out yet, because I can't wait to drop the bomb on everybody. Because this is my story now. Because I'm sitting there and I'm listening to Brian tell this, and so so you go to your office, and 15 minutes later they come in and say, so you can really do this? And you go, yeah, do it. And so they say, okay, all right. And they do it. And so Brian tells me this story, and I said, so what are you doing? And Brian's sitting there at the computer. He said, I'm just trying to find a crane. Like, you ain't got a crane? I said, no, but I'll find a crane. I'll find a crane. I can do it. And I'm like, You made the deal. You already got a crane.
I found it in Canada actually too.
Right.
Had to send somebody up there to take it apart and bring it back down.
Had a couple $100,000 to ship it down, and then but there's the deal. But the thing is, and this is the point that I want people to see, and I want young people to understand. He got out of high school, and he wasn't immediately determined to live his parents' lifestyle right then. He got out of high school, and he took it carefully and smart, and he didn't pile up debt.
Oof.
And he used things that had value. He worked with things that had value and built and helped other people build and became valuable personally to people. And he created stuff. And if he didn't have the money, he didn't buy it. And he went slow. And then you get to the point where somebody's 50-something years old and they can say, yeah, I'll go buy a crane, and then go buy one. Or somebody says, this food bank needs help. And you don't have to have a fundraiser for it. Because what would you do? What would you do? I grew up, my dad was a minister, and I grew up in a family and in a church that when there was a disaster in the community, somebody, a fire burned somebody's house down or something happened, people would get together, and you know what we'd do? We would pray. We would pray. And so I think back on that, and I think, yeah, it's fine to pray, but what were we praying for? I guess we were praying that somebody with some money could help. And so it is amazing to me, and I have been honored to watch you for years. I have been honored to watch you and Vicki be the answer to so many prayers for so many, just so many people.
Well, I'll say, Andy, I was brought up in a Christian home and stuff like that, but I was taught early on by my grandparents, my parents, and everybody else of the importance of tithing. I just know that's in my heart, my soul, that's number one priority. My dad always told me, he says, you remember, that money isn't yours. I mean, if the money that you need to tithe, it's not hard to put that away or give that to someplace that's needed, because it's not yours in the first place.
Right.
You get the honor of being able to decide what you want to do with it. And I've just had so many mentors growing up, and they didn't even know they were mentors to me. But I could sit back and listen and watch and learn and say, well, that's the way he does it.
Right. You had that personal board of directors.
It was. It's just so, and it's free. I mean, you got to listen and stuff that you fall back on. Just like the guy told you about that Chuck Snida that wanted me to get involved with the Alabama project. I remember one of the transformers that always seemed to blow up on Christmas or Thanksgiving. It was you could count on it. I mean, and it's again a disaster, catastrophic. It's bigger, 10 times the size of this studio, and went in there one time after it blowing up, and there's oil dripping from the ceilings, and I ended up we drained it and it crawled down inside just to see what it could see inside. You're in these big, massive coils and wires and stuff, going around with the flashlight, and when I get my head out of the hole at the top of the transformer is Chuck Snida, the top dog of the company. And he called me high tech sometimes, and I said, he says, high tech, what do you see down there? And I said, well, Mr. Snida, he says, it's Chuck. let's get that straight. He's got a cigar hanging out his mouth, and he said, what do you see down there? I said, I mean, it's pretty hard to crawl around and find out what's wrong in this, but I said, I did find one wire down at the bottom of the tank that's blown in half. I know that's not supposed to be like that. And this transformer would take a couple months because to be able to remove and replace, because the infrastructure wasn't set up to do that. And he says, what do you suggest? I said, I don't know. I just found one wire. There could be more. I found this one. I mean, I guess I could splice it back together. And he looked at me, and I use this story lots, right? He looked at it. I'll use a different language than what Canadians use up there. He says, well, High Tech, is it screwed up now? I said, yes, sir. He says, do you think you can make it more screwed up by trying that? I go, probably not. He says, I'd suggest you give it a try.
Wow.
Yeah, splice that wire back together, and we filled that sucker up with oil. It took a couple days, and that thing ran for another 5 months before it blew up again. But then we were ready to change it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But I go back to the before I knew you, I was invited to a men's prayer breakfast designed around people that are into nonprofits and stuff like that.
Right,
and the guy asked me, says, do you want to go 7 in the morning? Is this or 6:30? Is this prayer breakfast thing? And they got a speaker. I go, not really. That's kind of a heavy time. 6:30 in the morning is really when we're kicking things off. I said, who's the speaker? He said, well, his name's Andy Andrews. I go, I have no idea who that is, but I got my office later that afternoon and started going through your videos. And I'm going, I've never been able to explain to people exactly kind of what I do because I didn't really ever figure it out myself. Okay, I'm serious. I'm just a pig farmer that turned into electrician, turned into this. But I watched your story about Cortez. It was one of my favorite ones.
Right.
And I think I can do it better than you now.
You probably can.
Because I've done it so many times for
Burn
people.
the boats, yeah.
Because that's how everything's done for me. Once you get to a point that you have no choice, what are you going to do? You better dig in and fight it and work through it because you got no choice.
Yeah.
That's an incredible story. Whether it's an airport that you end up buying or a crane that you're not sure is going to work, well, by golly, you're going to make sure it's going to work, depending on what you have to do, but it better work.
Yeah.
Once you're committed, it's too late.
Hey, you need to, at some point, I don't know if you've listened to the podcast with Steve Jacobson a few weeks ago, the CEO of Fairway, but you and he have a lot in common, and you are also the only two people I've ever had on podcasts. Both of you talked about tithing, and I think you would enjoy that podcast. Mm-hmm. But thank you, buddy, for being here. You have always been there for me, and you're such an encouragement to me. You're a mentor to me, a mentor to the boys, a protector for Polly and my family. And
well, you've been a mentor for my family too. So, well, I mean,
it's just that I've always considered it a God thing that we ended up together.
It absolutely is. That day after I watched all those videos, I got excited to go home to Vicky and says, look at this guy, watch this. And I said, I'm going to go to this breakfast thing. Now I'm excited, right? And she said, well, do you know who that is? I go, And she's going through some paperwork. She says, well, that's the next door neighbor of the house that we just bought in Orange Beach. And I didn't go, I just go, that makes sense. Because there's no coincidences for me. Yeah. I mean, I just go, okay. And I ran up to you after that.
I remember that day. I remember.
And you're kind of backed off, like, why is this guy coming up?
What's that? The Canadians are coming. Oh, my God. But thank you, buddy.
Thank you.
I appreciate it so much. You guys, I hope you have enjoyed this as much as I have. I'm Andy Andrews, the professional noticer, harnessing common sense and wisdom to plow through challenges all the way to answers for you. And I think that'll do it for this week. Get us out of here, Matthew. So, ladies and gentlemen, and to the boys and girls who aspire to become ladies and gentlemen, we've reached the end of another episode of The Professional Noticer. In a world where common sense has become a superpower, I'm harnessing the tiny bit of mental energy I have For you, seeking wisdom, making observations, and endeavoring to answer tough questions in a way that will empower your family and your business. I'm Andy Andrews. Until next week, goodbye. This episode of The Professional Noticer was produced by Matt Limpert. The Noticer theme, written and performed by Sugarcane Jane. Caddy Attitudes, provided by Twinkle and Smoke of Beverly Hills. Additional financial consideration provided by peelamealdiet.com. Do you love food? Are you getting a bit pudgy? Wouldn't you love to indulge in whatever meal you want without the added calories? Try the Peel a Meal diet system, the scratch and sniff diet catered to your specific taste. Simply fill out a questionnaire on our website, peelamealdiet.com, to let us know what cuisines you crave. Then we'll build your custom entrees for you, complete with appetizers and desserts. The menus we provide will be chock full of peel, scratch, and sniff pages of the finest, freshest foods available. The aromas are so real, you'll feel like you've consumed a whole multi-course breakfast, lunch, or dinner by the time you've finished smelling each delectable sticker. Simply using the power of your nostrils and a bit of your imagination, our top Peel-A-Meal diet foods include grilled filet mignon, fried catfish, banana pudding, chicken sandwiches, French fries, pepperoni pizzas, bacon, potato chips, green beans, and so many, many more. Friends will be shocked and envious about the weight that you lost and kept off simply by smelling a few pieces of sticky paper 3 times a day. Who needs an hour-long lunch break? Not you. Sniff for 5 minutes and get back to work. So start your day off right with the Peel-A-Meal diet system, now available in the new low-sodium and gluten-free aromas. We are peelamealdiet.com. Start losing weight first thing tomorrow morning. Because remember, breakfast is the most important sniff of the day.